we rep it from the Bay over here too. So do ask everyone to be on mute. But if you have something to say, please say it. I'm not here to mute anyone. I'm here to control the space right here. This is a public space. But don't got anything to say. Maybe your background noise, chiming in, maybe distract some people. So just keep yourself on mute. But if you have something to say it. If you don't want to talk in chat. But without further ado, I'm gonna repost the agenda in every now and then into the chat just to get people familiar with what we're going on here. So a little introduction. I am Jaden. I'm from the Bay Area, organized with GSUS California from the Bay NorCal area. I help do these kind of political discussions where we talk about what's in the agenda, critiquing capitalism. For this time around, it's talking about freedom, talking about decolonization as a core tenet to the left. You cannot have any left values or any articulations without decolonization, as it is an antithesis against the capitalist system, which props up colonialism. So that's our agenda and stuff, and great. So we are going to get right into the deep of it. Just want to let people know this session is now recording, so no more secrets. I know we told our little lovely secrets beforehand, but no more of that now, right? This is a public space. Don't just act as if everything was being monitored by FBI agent, little dirty Fed. So now that the feds have joined us, capitalism, the pick-me system, and I love to describe capitalism in such way because not only does it belittle the privatized mode of production, but it helps us understand how such a system has materialized in our ways. So the capitalism, the pick-me system, first to go off is, how is it a pick-me? What is a pick-me system? For those who don't know, pick-me is kind of like a grabbing attention. It's like being an attention whore. It's being someone like, hey, give me all of your attention, give me all of, this, or just give me in general. Just pay attention to me. Hi, me. I'm capitalism. Look how small my hands are. Look, oh my God, look at my dainty little small. Oh, look at me, I'm so small. Look, oh my God, capitalism, pick-me system. Notice your advertisements, right? All of your marketing material, all of the psychological play that goes into making the advertisement. It's a pick-me system, right? Capitalism thrives off of people's ability to consume. Yes, it's hilarious, and I would say it's for the most part pretty true, because capitalism will go out and seek you, right? We call them markets, the economics will call them markets, because the markets are little centralized, niches, as they would say, or spaces that target on a specific demographic. And so the pick-me system goes out and be like, hey, look at me, fishing industry. I have a bunch of fishing stuff that I have since appropriated and exploited out of people's labor. But look at all the shiny, cool, fancy tackle boxes that you can use on little fishing trips. Capitalism brings out the most of people of what, consumerism people. That's what people get out of this pick-me system. So when I put the bullet point, conspicuous consumption and waste, this goes into a Veblen, kind of a slight Marxist analysis of how people consume in the material condition. So conspicuous consumption is a very great idea to help us understand. But more importantly, we discuss inconspicuous production. But before that, we have to talk about conspicuous consumption and waste from a Marxist and a dialectical, a material more so perspective. So conspicuous consumption is this consuming obviously, right? Conspicuous means to be obvious, or, to show, right, loosely. But conspicuous consumption is you are doing it obviously. So when I go to the example of a car in a mansion, right? You have your, as Veblen says, pecuniary strength. You have a lot of money, right? You have the means at which you can make a lot of money. And your consumption of that and your show of consumption is also a show of how much money you make. So conspicuous consumption helps us understand how people consume this in this society, how culture is built on a capitalist society, in the superstructure of a capitalist society. So conspicuous consumption looks like this, right? I am not, what is it? I'm not away from this. I'm not above this. Me, myself, I conspicuously consume through the iPhone, right? I conspicuously consume through this, all of the nice quote unquote luxuries that we have. But conspicuous consumption goes much more than just having things and having just fancy things. Conspicuous consumption is telling people, not through words, but through the show of what you have. So generally you can think of this as the hype beast, Supreme, Off-White, kind of like, expensive Gucci, expensive clothing that's not really, worth the price. You pay a lot for it because of your pecuniary strength or however much money you have. The obvious show, wow, that guy's wearing $2,000 shirt. Doesn't just mean that he's wearing an expensive shirt. It also means to us that that guy has the means of buying that shirt at $2,000 and he's okay financially, right? He's fine. That's conspicuous consumption. You see someone out there with this brand new Mercedes. Wow, look at that person, has enough pecuniary strength, this money, this obvious consuming, right? Consumerism of having that very expensive car or having that very expensive house, that yacht or mansion or whatever. And this goes way bloated and stuff when you get into big billionaire stuff like yachts and mega mansions and all of this, like, you know, stock playing. It's a conspicuous consumption is a very important idea, at least to the societal effect, right? When we're discussing economic theory, we would err on the side of Marx. But when I like to talk about society and superstructure, because that's where everyone lives. Everyone lives in the superstructure of the society, the culture of what makes either the capitalism or the, you know, the what we want, a socialism, the more community type of, you know, living. But conspicuous consumption in the capitalist society in which where this theory has been developed shows us how people don't just consume for self. Like people don't just want a Mercedes to just want a Mercedes. They have the badge on the front of the car and the back of the car and the look of the car to show off, essentially, right? You don't buy a Mercedes or, you know, a BMW or like a Brahms or like another fancy car just to have it for yourself. You show it off. I think the automobile is one of those things that you can directly show off, and then you inconspicuously hide yourself, just like how you inconspicuously produce this. And this idea of inconspicuous production in relation to conspicuous production is the fact that, well, no one knows how this stuff is made. So let's talk about the automobile, right? The person who buys the automobile, one, does not know how it works or functions, cannot tell me the 4 cycles of the internal combustion engine which makes the car move forward, and all the components which make that combustion happen, with all of the converging processes and outputs, you know, to make the motion go forward. So just a little bit quick of how this works, right? The internal combustion has 4 cycles. It goes the intake, and then the compression, the combustion, and then the exhaustion. Now, you don't have to worry about all of that, but that is a little bit piece of production of how the car produces movement, this explosion, this contained explosion, this internal combustion. But this is the essence, right? Breaking down inconspicuous production. Inconspicuous production is not knowing how stuff works, and it goes hand in hand with conspicuous production. Do you think the person who bought the Supreme or Beast clothing knows how that shirt was made, whether it was screen printed or it embroidered, or it was, you know, all clothing is handmade and so, like, do you think the person who bought that clothing knows how? No. 9 times out of 10, I'll say 9.9 times out of 10, the individual does not know how the stuff was made. That's inconspicuous production, right? I don't know how my phone was made. I don't know how this phone case was made. I just know that I just have it, right? Maybe conspicuously I have it. I'm showing it to you right now, but more so, of course, consumptiously, like consumerism. Like I consume this, having this in my possession, right? Now, of course, you can go into the material science of how this product was made, breaking down that inconspicuous production. But for the most part in society, especially this capitalist liberal society, we live in a space in where inconspicuous production prevails in almost every aspect of life, right? When you drive your car, you don't know how your car like runs and works. I'm a mechanic, so I know a little bit of things. I'm not saying I own everything, but I know how a car works. So to me, the automobile is not, you know, conspicuous. Now boats, however, a little bit less, right? Sewing and stuff like that, you know, it's a little farther in my, you know, perception. But that is, in essence, inconspicuous production. When you drive your car, you don't know that your fuel injector is taking fuel from the fuel tank, from a fuel filter, from a fuel pump back there to shoot the fuel into the combustion chamber, which, you know, and then the entire material process, the machine processes that make the automobile go forward, it just does. You put your foot on the gas pedal, or first you turn your car on, gas pedal, brake off, go forward. That's all you need to do to get your, you know, point A to point B automobile transportation. And that is your conspicuous consumption, that I am obviously going point A to point B with my automobile, but inconspicuous production. Don't know how it works. It's like a magic box that when I put my foot on the pedal, it goes. So capitalism ingrains this idea, especially as a pick me system, because, you know, as a pick me is like, yeah, you don't worry about the fine details about my existence. Just know that I'm here and you need to pick me and you need to show me love. right? As a capitalism, as a mode of production. So, but have these ideas in hand, and then we talk about waste finally when we combine these two of conspicuous consumption and inconspicuous production. So the waste part goes with that consumption. So when we talk about waste and you go even farther into the processes of the automobile waste, let's talk about the pollution that the automobile creates, right? It's also a conspicuous waste. People, you know that there is going to be polluted, especially even if you drive a Tesla or even drive an electric car, right? All of the emissions which made that EV or the electric car is done in the beginning processes, the making, because it takes a lot of diesel, or it takes a lot of gas, at least energy, to mine the I would say the nickel, the cobalt, the ores, right? Mining all of the ores out which makes that battery, and then putting that battery together in a factory at which it's not entirely electric. The factory's batteries is run. I live in the Bay Area, and just a little, like, you know, I don't want to dox myself here, but the Tesla factory is right there. Like the big old Tesla factory before they moved to Texas. Yeah, the big old factory is right there. I have a cousin who works at Tesla. So, or he quit because the working conditions were so shit. He had to quit. And I quit my job. She was working, but that's all besides the point. The people working in the factory as well also go through this process of conspicuous consumption and production, right? They conspicuously or inconspicuously produce. They just know how this stuff, you put the panel on the car, it goes down the line, but the individual is not brought into the entire process. This goes into Karl Marx's division of labor, if you know anything about that. But inconspicuous production borrows from this division of labor, right? Because you don't know how the entire process goes, so you know a little bit, you know a snapshot of the entire process. So long as the individual is separated or divided in that process in production, the individual will never truly own the means of production. That's all economic theory and whatnot, such horse. Conspicuous, diddy, bling, opulence, yeah, obviousness, right? So I got the question so late, but yeah, it's obvious. It's like, I use the word flaunting. I read, it comes from this book right here. Let me get take it out without destroying my little stack right here. Thorstein Veblen's theory of the business or theory of the leisure class. The leisure class tells us, and the leisure class is akin to the bourgeois class, the ruling capital owning class, but Thorstein Veblen makes a distinction in this one, and where traditional businessmen and bourgeois individuals own productive, quote unquote, capital, where you traditionally think of factories, oil rigs, you think of transportation, automotive, railroads, right? The leisure class own capital that is quote unquote non-productive. The distinction without a difference, we're talking about capital owning individuals, but we're talking about society. Usually when you go to this non-productive, non-industrious capital, you're thinking of clothing, not the sewing of, but the trading of. So think of trading stuff. You're non-productive. You're it's less appropriative of labor and more appreciative of class, right? You're doing it for a flaunt. Now that's not the entirety of your bourgeois entity, but the leisure class specifically in this book is that, think of the Met Gala. Right. Think of actors, actresses, celebrities. Think of these people. You're non-industrious capitalists. Think of the people who own merch brands, but do not touch any of the side when it comes to the manufacturing processes. Right. Drop shipping is considered a leisure class, capital, right? Because you're not doing any of the labor. You're having other people do the labor for you. But distinction without a difference when it comes to talking about capitalism. But there is a great distinction you can discuss and have. That's why we love talking about theory, right? So there's a great distinction to talk about, probably not so much a difference, but that's what makes theory fun to read, right? So when we talk about conspicuous waste, though, and from conspicuous consumption, right, we talk about the emissions from the automobile. When you're talking about plastic wrappers, a very big one nowadays, right? Conspicuous waste. And then every now and then the For You page on, my wife's will come up, and then it will be a Korean person or some Asian person making a ramen, right? But then you see all of this plastic wrapping for just the brick of noodle, and then the plastic wrapping for the seasoning, and the plastic wrapping for all of this plastic stuff goes conspicuous consumption. Look at my little pretty seasoning packet. Look at my little pretty brick of noodles in this very nice, very cute packaging. And then the waste part, of course, is the plastic. It's very, 1-to-1 right there, right? Plastic equals waste, but that is the conspicuous waste, right? You can show for it, not just through your actual consumption, but through your waste, through the no longer usable, as we would call it, the no longer usable part. serviceable to your consumption, right? You can't use it any farther than what is the packaging and holding of the product, but you can use it as a show of waste. Hey, look at my little trash that I have. This represents me, my sort of consumption in this process. So people are free to do so. I'm trying a little segue into the next topic, but people are free to do so. This conspicuous waste and consumption under this capitalist system. You are free to do whatever you want. You are free to not know how your car works, and then it still works, and cars are still produced. That's great. You can freely, buy that Mercedes or that automobile, right? So I'm doing automobile stuff. I'm a, big automobile, mechanic. And the examples come to me very great. That's how I could best describe things. But you're talking about capitalism, conspicuous consumption. People drive that Mercedes. Inconspicuous production. People don't know how that Mercedes works. People don't know how to rotate tires, change wheels, change wheel hubs, do oil changes and whatnot. That's all, whatever. I don't know how most stuff works in the world. It doesn't mean that it still doesn't work. But people are free to not know how this stuff works. And we live in that free society. But where do freedoms come from? Boom, there's the question. Where do freedoms come from? Are freedoms given or shackled or restrained? Right? Do they just happen to exist? Right? Very, very deep philosophical talks we're getting here. Freedoms, as I have articulated, as what is observable. Right? Freedoms are not given. You don't give anyone freedoms. This denotes a relationship hierarchical. Right? If someone is higher than you in this hierarchy and gives you a freedom, your freedoms are contingent on the fact that this person gave it to you, right? Or the fact that this person has, quote unquote, given you this right. And so therefore your entire existence of having that freedom is reliant on this person still giving it to you. Think about US law, court, right? We'll get into a little bit later, but notice how the US government, right? If you are born here, you are given rights, given, right? You are born here, sir, ma'am, dude, you are, freedom. Yeah. It's like freedom in this liberal society is like, it's reactionary. It is a reactionary system, this freedom, because once someone infringes on a freedom, then it's given, critical thought. Then it's given like, we should address this because it wasn't a problem before. And it is reactionary in the types of way this freedom that has been given to us in this society. So is it given or restrained? Freedoms are shackled, right? Everyone who exists, and this goes into more philosophical talk. Everyone is born, now stay with me here, in throw, THROW, just throwing things, like throwing a baseball. People are born in throw. And what does this mean? When you're born in throw, everyone does it. You are just here. You are just here now. And of course, there are historical processes that you can explain to how you got to this point. But in throw, let me break it down for you. My mouth jutting out these words, going into this mic, going into the USB cable onto the computer right here, this little laptop, which is being transmitted digitally and then being outputted from your speakers or from your headphones or whatever you're listening to onto your ears, in which the production process does not stop there. Your ears are then analyzing and digesting the information at which you are hearing, to which your internal brain processes are understanding the words that are coming out of my mouth. And then, if you were to give a response, then the process would, come back, fold in. But this is that, discussion of freedom. We are free to do whatever we want and stuff, but the stuff still happens, right? So is freedoms given or restrained? Or shackled, right? Because when you were born in throw. You didn't ask to be here. You didn't ask to be like, yeah, it's my time to start existing now. I accept all of the, the contradictions, the restrictions, limitations of the material condition. I accept all this stuff. Other people there. No one comes in here into life and be like, yeah, before I was born, I accepted all this bullshit and I'm going to accept it. I'm going to take it. Everyone's born in throw, meaning everyone is born not having been consented. Yes. Yes. Z.
Hey guys, just real quick, I don't know if you all have looked, but Discord is actually highly traceable. So I don't know if you've considered setting up a Signal account. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Are you good?
What you're saying, but yeah, something to think about. And then also, I see you have a cap of 25 on discussion. I'm guessing that's intentional, but wanted to make sure you're aware of that.
Yeah, you only get 2 big of a crowds, but yeah, Signal's great. I'm Signal chats myself, but decrypt your communication. If it's not decrypted or if it's not decentralized, people are looking, or people can look, which means people are looking, and it's not just people. It's the feds. It's the people who want to look who are looking. So just be careful about what you say, how you say, unlike me, and then where you say it as well.
I'm just saying because I think the intention is to get up to multi-millions for this, for this strike, and we're going to be able to organize properly. We definitely need to be able to have communication there.
Yeah.
So for some of us elder millennials, I don't know if you guys hear me at all. Is there a
Yep.
way for you guys to explain to me or show me how I could? Because I'd love to continue to talk to you guys. It seems like you guys hear me.
Yeah.
What you're saying, I was concerned about the same thing. But I hear these things. I have no idea how to start or do or look without possibly being myself as well. Thank you guys for
Right.
your time.
Cool.
I could drop a link to Signal in the chat.
Yeah, it's an
We
app.
actually-
Oh yeah,
Much
go ahead.
appreciation. Thank you.
We got some going already.
Mhm.
This is
Yeah,
just
we
free
got-
political education on Discord, you know.
Just yapping session, it's like double dipping. Like, this is a public area and it's being recorded, being posted on the public. It's all eyes are on this, and the more eyes, great, cool. We love to have the community here. So back to freedoms, right? People are free to do it, and it's just like great display. People are free to do whatever. I'm not here to tell people what they can and cannot do, right? You want to say something, you say something and whatnot. People are free. But understand that when you get into the discussions of states, government, and such and what like that, right? Your freedoms are on a contract, or I would just say straight, they're shackled, they're restrained. You are giving consent, quote unquote. The fact that you exist in this space, you already forfeit, on most cases, some rights, right? Now, there are obvious ones. Don't kill. That's just like a give me. That's just like a bad. It's like you don't do that. But there are some rights that are restrained and shackled by the contract at which you exist in. If you are in this space, the U.S. Imperial Corps, you're restricted and restrained by the U.S. Imperial Corps' laws of the land. So the freedoms, where do they come from? They exist with you already in throw, right? As when you're a baby, you're not given the right to scream and, kick and cry. You just do. Right. But, when you're talking about freedoms and these rights, I wouldn't say they're man-made constructs, right? There are fundamental absolute truths of the material condition that exist that allow us to exist and be here. Right. So a human right would be, and then you go on the processes of what makes the individual exist. How can we exist? How do we exist and such? So human subsistence, that's a human right. Like for me, all the way. You go housing, food, shelter, safety, comfort, psychological health. All this stuff, all this great stuff that we can do, right? We just choose not to, right? Freedom, your choice through the distribution of our mode of production, right? Capitalism produces, I want to say great. Don't think I'm saying capitalism great, produces great numbers, right? But it produces. There is a distribution problem, however, right? Of course, with the capitalist mode of production, there are obvious, faults in the hierarchy which establishes in the workplace. That's a given. That's an obvious. But the distribution as well. It's how our products and services, once produced out of the mode of production, is distributed, right? You have millions and millions of pounds worth of food, and they are just being hoarded, thrown away, or stolen and wasted, versus actually being distributed to individuals who need it, right? So it's not just a production problem in the way we organize our labor, but it's also a distribution problem by which, we get to say where all of this stuff goes. Food goes here, housing goes here, and if anyone needs it, they need it and they get to have it. It's a human right. Of course, you get into the legal loopholes in which we get into liberalism. The liberals, the LIBERALS, those individuals, right? And decolonization, in the colonization, chapter, this little section. We talk about these freedoms. Right, you have them. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't have any freedoms. Right, you exist here. You exist as an, I was saying American raw, as a free person. It is not until you acknowledge that you are shackled, right? Because you don't notice your shackles moving if you don't see them, right? If you're always constantly looking at somewhere, right, following the propaganda or taking your attention away from yourself, you don't ever notice the shackles on yourself. Right? Take a moment to reflect and understand, how am I, or how do I or you fit into the world? We're all in this together, right? Individualism is a horrible thing to really get yourself into. I make the critique of spirituality to build up individualism as a communal tool, right? Not not as an individualism that, seeks that, divide and conquer type of individualism. The individual exists among the shared material condition, of which the shared material condition contains all of us. Right? No one individual just lives by themselves, right? No matter how isolated. The most isolated a person ever was one of the astronauts who went to the moon for the first time, right? In Apollo 11, 7, someone correct me, when they were orbiting around the dark side of the moon. That's the most isolated anyone can get. And then they just went back the other side, and then they were with around one more people. But as long as you're on Earth, which hope everyone is, you are surrounded by, I want to say friends, but comrades, individuals, and people. So let's talk about decolonization from freedom, because obviously when you're talking about colonization, freedoms are restrained and shackled. Talk about decolonization, your freedoms are, your rights are unshackled, right? You are given, quote unquote, more freedoms, but you are just regaining. I want to say you're regaining what you had lost, or what you had, what has been taken away from you. So decolonization is a core tenet to left value, or to anti-capitalist value, because capitalism is synonymous to colonialism. So we are anti-capitalism, we are anti-colonial, decolonization. So decolonization is not just the erasure of these man-made borders. Decolonization is not the erasure of these white supremacist systems. It is, right? But it goes much deeper than just the erasure. It is also the building up of what? Decolonizing modes of thought. So the liberal mode of thought is a colonized mode of thought. Capitalism is a colonial mode of thought. And this mode of thought teaches the individualism, supremacy. It doesn't have to be white, but generally as it has been developed, it is a white supremacy. So colonization is that, individualism, white supremacy. It is this, hierarchy, patriarchy, right, of man, the penis holder, power to the penis holders and such, that perpetuate this dynamic of the relationships at which we experience in the mode of production, capitalism, right? So colonization keeps this dynamic of worker being oppressed by the oppressor boss. So the boss worker relationship is being maintained so long as colonialism, and it's all those other, contingencies, capitalism, imperialism, white supremacy, patriarchy, hierarchy, and all this stuff, right? All come into this one umbrella that oppress the people, the working class as a collective. So to have and to be a leftish individual, at least starting on the left, right? From the center to the left, right? When you go from center, capitalism, to left, capitalism bad, boo, bam. There it is. Leftism, capitalism bad. Yeah, but you have to understand what capitalism is. Right? We talk about capitalism as the pick-me system. Right? There are many other ways to talk about capitalism than just the pick-me system. Hey, pick me, advertisements, psychological torture, color theory, and talking, and trying to grab out the individuals, most, ethos, pathos, and logos, to get people to buy stuff. That's all the capitalism. We're talking about left. You're talking about no more of that. No more of trying to get at people's emotions. No more trying to get at people's wallets for the sake of a profit. Right? So decolonization breaks all of this stuff down. Decolonization is deconstructing that U.S. hegemonic thought, breaking down that American exceptionalism. That thing right there, break it down. But you're breaking down all of these modes of thought that harm community and harm your ability to build connections with your fellow person, because you are, so long as, colonialism is this, prevalent mode of thought, you are also establishing individualism. And individualism is that, anti-community. It's that I, me, will do all this stuff myself. Notice how under capitalism that you are expected to provide for yourself, not just for yourself, but for your family as well. Not just your family, but your wife if you're a man. But if you're a wife, you don't have you're supposed to, quote unquote, white picket fence, your nuclear family model that, the husband works all the time. Now, 2 incomes is needed and whatnot and such. But all within the relations of what makes the capitalist system work, boss, dynamic and relationship, exploitation of surplus value, bam, boom, economic theory. Right. But decolonization is that core tenet of the left. You have to have some sort of decolonization, this decolonized mode of thought, this hey, don't, I won't say don't tread on me, but, anti-fascism. Fascism is, the core tenet of fascism is colonizing, because you need to be able to oppress, take what is not yours, take which what is not yours, make it yours. Fascism, liberalism as well, but capitalism, capitalizing, right? All these little words, those synonyms, right? Some people think these words are come out of left field. Now we're talking about fascism. Now we're talking about capitalism, but they're all connected. And it just takes time to understand how these are connected, right? So we are, we talk about liberal, land, and law. right? So with decolonization being a core tenet of the left, we have to talk about the, what we're de-ing, colonizing, which is a liberal, is a land, is a law thing, right? There are structures in place which keep this and maintain this dynamic of colonizing, right? Which is, I would say, is very liberal. It's very freedom, very individual, right? Natural rights. And, when the Enlightenment period thinkers of the 1800s, 1600s individuals, when we were transitioning from feudalism to capitalism, we had this natural divine rights. There's something, the unalienable rights that cannot be taken away from me. But who was me? Who wrote those? He hath mixed his labor with and therefore made it ours. Who wrote we the people? Who wrote the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Who wrote that? I'll spoil it for you. White European men, penis holders of the pastel 8x11 colored people, the colonizers. That is who was written by. And doesn't matter how much you strip yourself away from this, from your text, you will always embed some sort of, sorry, my phone's going off. You'll always embed your, I would say, identity, but embed your essence in a sense. So he hath mixed his labor with, right? Therefore, his labor comes from somewhere. So he hath mixed himself with this white, liberal, Eurocentric European mode of thought, right? This colonizing mode of thought. So we talk about our Rousseau's, our Voltaire's, our blanking on me right now, but those Enlightenment period philosophers, Descartes, right? I think, therefore I am, right? This liberal ideal, right? Non-material, this ideal mode of thought, which is what makes colonization dangerous. Because if it is the I think, therefore I am, then it is the I don't care about what the material conditions say or any of the shared conditions, the individuals in it. I just care about me, I, the individual. I think, therefore I am. I think I'm a billionaire and I'm going to be a billionaire, right? Ooh, bad. Ooh, don't say that. Don't clip that. But that is the colonizing mode of thought, is the me, I, I am man, MAN. I think, therefore I am. I am going to do this. I am a free individual, right? Who doesn't need a community, because, we have since developed a mode of production that allows me to build up capital for myself so that I can do stuff. That's great, right? Disgusting, gross. I don't know how that left my mouth. That was pretty gross. But you're talking about liberals, right? You're talking about, at least, way back when, classical liberalism, we're talking about land, right? Because land was very prevalent back then, but you had to be productive on your land, apparently so, as the text reads, right? Or else that land can then be appropriated and used for productive things, but or you could say for the white man's interest, right? But land, as they've taken this ideology, this liberal ideology from the French Revolution, American Revolution, and then onto the indigenous people of the, Turtle Island, this, U.S., this American land, right? They use that ideology. You are not building railroads, and you are not making tobacco. What are these indigenous people doing? Taking care of the land? The land takes care of itself. They don't need that land. We will slaughter them ourselves. That is the liberal mode of thought. That is the I think, therefore I am. I will do as such as I need to. It's appropriative. And I get into the dynamics of appropriation versus appreciation, right? And how most of the white man's ideology is appropriation. It is that taking out which is not his, making it his, versus appreciation, right? Understanding what is not yours, not even attempting to make it yours, right? Not without this collaboration or this cooperation, right? So this appropriation, this competition, this competitiveness of this white man's ideology, right, is baked within the scheme of life for most individuals in the current, right, modern 21st century, right? This competition, this I need to do stuff, me, myself, right? I need to get that job. I need to make that paycheck. I need me, right? No more, no of this community building, no of this, seeking out your neighbor, which is, going to be broken down, right, through our discussions in education, our talking and conversations of, right, talking about how we can build a better world, right? It doesn't take much to make people smile, right? We're talking about change for the world, right? I want to make the world a better place. Great. How do we start? You have nice conversations about it, right? I was at the dispensary the other day, call me a little pothead, have nice little conversations with the workers there, and it's already a left space, being a dispensary, so it's very easy. But then going into non-left spaces as well, it may sound intimidating to try and get those leftward, anti-capitalist, better wages, better working condition conversations out there. But most people, I'll say all people, are deserving of these better conditions, and they cannot deny themselves that. If individuals deny themselves that, the individual buys into American exceptionalism. The individual buys in, has accepted this appropriative relationship of boss and worker, and where they can imagine themselves as a boss oppressing the worker. And that is the kind of mode of thought we are deconstructing, right? No one is above one. That's why, I'm here as a decentralized organization. No one is above one another. People can start projects whenever they want, however they want. Just let us know if you need help, right? I've asked help for many times for, the stuff that I do for this, right? And then it's not a shameful thing. It's a communal thing. We have to get this stuff done, and getting the stuff done requires people to come together, right? This decolonial mode of thought. I don't need to be capitalizing this by myself, right? Whatever I produce out of this for this organization is free for everyone to use, right? You can clip, but don't clip it with context, right? I say words a lot. Like I just said a whole bunch of stuff. You clip it wrong, it makes me seem like a capitalist, a bigot. Don't do that. But whatever we produce around here is free for the people to use, right? Is free for, all of this that we produce is for the community's use, right? Breaking down this profit motive, this private sector, this I will produce, but I need money first, right? All the words that I'm saying now, I could be getting paid for, and I have been paid for this, some of the consulting and talks, right, that I do. No longer do that anymore. All of my stuff is, free, or it's free. No more money. I don't want any more money. But, breaking down the profit motive, that's decolonization, right? Breaking down the U.S. hegemonic thought, breaking down this I, me. That's decolonization. Decolonization is similar to striking, right? You don't just decolonize, do one action, bam. I have denounced all of white conservative MAGA people. Decolonization is a little more process than that. It's a process at which you go through. For the individual who grew up in the U.S. Imperial Core. Hi, Bay Area. It takes a lifelong process to deconstruct this, because I am not no fault here. I still have my, little quote unquote prejudices, or I always think, biasly towards some things because of the way I grew up, right? But it takes time to deconstruct all of this mode of thought, all of these thinking processes that has allowed us to exist here, right? Because you can think whatever you want. Man's mind is very vast and is very adaptable. Humans are very adaptable, and you will do what you need to do to survive, even if that does mean participating within the system. Doesn't make you a hypocrite, but you do want to survive, right? Or you do want to live. Is you're going to do the things that will help you live, even if it is, contributing to the system, or, going into the system or whatnot. No one's going to fault you for working your job to survive. I wouldn't. Like if an individual does it, it's like those questions where it's like, go back to your country if you don't like it here. Whoa, we need to have a little conversation, right? Because obviously you don't understand what's going on, right? You can't just tell people to go back to your country. There's a lot of material processes and all of these conditions that have to be met, and obviously those conditions are not met because of the capitalist mode of production, because of the privatized profit motive. So we talk about decolonization, law, and land. Right, colonization is that upholding of this, at least this liberal law, is this reactionary law, is this law. People can do stuff until we don't find it right? Because back way when, not that long ago, back way when slavery was legal, you could own a slave. Isn't that fucking crazy? But then you look at laws now, you're like, it's not that crazy. I bet you in 50 to 100, 200 years, we look at laws back now and be like, oh my God, the Americans were fucking crazy, that which we are. So it's all perceptual of time. What may not be crazy now, as individuals has thought back then, what may not be crazy then, right, could be crazy in the future, could be lunacy. It all goes down to principle. The reason why it's all crazy, because none of these laws and none of these principles actually are disciplined to a fundamental framework or foundation. It's all reactionary. How do laws become to be and thing? People do stuff, shit happens. And when shit happens, people do more stuff. It's just overlapping on each other. It's this, when people do stuff, now we got to address it, right? I worked at UPS for a little bit, and there's like poster after poster after poster at every single corner of the building that tells you what not to do on every single piece of machine and equipment, because every single line on one of those little posters someone has done. So one of those bullet points on a ladder poster said, use both hands when climbing up. It seems like common sense. I'm not calling anyone dumb, but it seems like common sense, right? However, there was an instance of, oh my God, God's light, this is my cat. An instance of where an individual did not use two hands and ended up getting injured, right? It's reactionary. It's you don't do stuff until people are free to do whatever they want until it hurts someone, and especially or until it hurts the company, the enterprise. Then we have to do something about it. But anyone is free, that is how labor laws are constructed, right? Because not just because people protest for them, people like got them, into law, but because people started dying. Not just because people started dying, but business started losing profit because people started dying. Hold on, we need people to live to make a profit. Okay, we will do some, labor laws and what just to keep the worker alive. But it's all reactionary, right? We wouldn't have the 40-hour week if we didn't bitch and complain enough, burn enough cars or destroy any buildings, right? We wouldn't have all this stuff. Now, I'm not advocating for violence, right? No violence around here. We want to do this stuff very peacefully, having discussions like these, open discussions, where people ask questions, better understand our shared material condition. But it is that violence that has made the change, especially with the unions, to have our 40-hour work weeks, to have a minimum wage, minimum, but having all of our, these conditions or sick days and whatnot, all of these semantics of what makes the workplace, the work conditions as such, right? Violence has made those changes materialize because businesses were losing profit. Well, on a little side note, working at UPS, I did have, minimum wage, haha. I did, was there when the Teamsters were negotiating the contracts. And as a mechanic at UPS, I talked to most of the drivers because, it was their trucks. Some drivers have their trucks on their specific routes and they get to keep it. They sticker bomb it. They do all cool stuff with it. UPS drivers pretty cool. The drivers, when I was talking to them about the Teamsters union contract, right, most of them didn't like the terms, right? The young people wanted a raise. It wasn't big enough raise. The older tenured, seniority, Teamsters, the drivers wanted more pensions, which were slashed. So it was a lose-lose across the board for the negotiations for the Teamsters, and they still signed it. So who would sign that though, right? Because they only got a $5 raise over the course of 5 years, which is a dollar a year, plus cost of living adjustment, which is only like 30 cents a year. So at most you're going to get $1.50 a year, right, for your raise at the end of the year, because they're broken down into two parts. It's you get a raise at the beginning of the year, and then you get a raise in the middle of the year when your contract has renewed. For the Teamsters, it was during the summer. For the machinists, what I was a part of was later in the year, earlier in the year. But you have all of these, contracts and litigations and stuff like that. Unions rub me off in a little bit of a wrong way because they are, I would say, class collaborationists. Individual, unions collaborate with the class, but this is not to bash any unions, right? Go support a union, go start a union, because unions help us understand, class solidarity. And when you're with enough unions, you'll have enough class to have that solidarity. But be careful with unions. Unions are not revolutionary. Yes.
Can I briefly interrupt here just to explain how the contracts are ratified in a trade union?
Yes, please.
It's not that someone signs it, some leadership just signs it.
Yeah.
They have to be ratified by the body.
Yeah.
So even though they were complaining about parts of the contract, that still means that the members of the union voted to ratify the contract. It was not just some person at the top's decision.
No. That's entirely correct, right? So I even asked, hey, how are you voting to most of the Teamsters? And most of them like, no, yes, because the main contention point for the Teamsters, at least for the building that I was in, they didn't want to strike, right? Even though the machinists were like, go strike, we want to strike, go to strike. There were less people who wanted to strike because it meant that they had more of a chance to not get paid. The Teamsters had a fund, but depending on how long they could hold up the strike for, they might have not gotten paid. And then I think I saw the actual strike terms. It was like 80% of the max pay that you would get. So you receive only 80% for 2 weeks. We, as the machinists in the same building, had a sympathy strike clause or with the Teamsters in that building, and we would only get 50% since it was a sympathy strike. It wasn't for us. We would get 50% for 2 weeks, and we couldn't survive on 50%, so we couldn't strike, right? Sympathy strike. The strike never happened, right? You never heard about it because it didn't happen. The contract ratified, but those were the strike terms. The funding for the Teamsters only had enough for the members who did want to strike, 80% for 2 weeks. That's all the fun they had, and then they would have leftovers up. But it didn't sound like a good enough, a gamble for the Teamsters to strike and have, UPS concede to higher pay, better working conditions. President O'Brien and the Teamsters, ratified that contract at favorable terms to UPS. After the contract ratified, it was a shit show. The Teamsters, especially the package handlers, did not receive as much as they needed to. They totally could have gotten more, but that's all semantics for the unions. But after derailing off of that, unions are great. I don't want to say unions are bad, right? Because unions help that class solidarity, help people get better working conditions as well. It establishes organizing fundamentals in our communities, right? When you organize with community, so that you can understand in how people can come and work together intentionally, right, in a workplace. And then outside of the workplace, you can adapt those methods and stuff, right, to have stuff outside of your job, to then you can start actually organizing with your community and people, right? That it's not, paid by paycheck or work. You do it for the love of the game. But unions, great. Love them. Just be careful. Understand how unions work, right? I'll always advocate for a union before I do any private enterprise, but this doesn't mean that unions are the solution, right? So after that contract ratified, it was a complete shit show. It was great. But now that we are about that, let's see, 10 minutes till, I'll do what I usually do. Go from the bottom up from the agenda. I'll post it again. And then we'll just recap, have some questions afterwards. Maybe if you want to type some questions, you can. So we're going to go from the bottom up. So we ended up with decolonization. Well, we ended with unions. But decolonization, we're going to go back now. Decolonization, core 10 on the left, you have to have this mode of thought. You have to have this understanding of not just, being on the left anti-capitalism, but being pro-colonialism. That's a contradiction. And a contradiction unaddressed is reactionary. So you address this contradiction by being like, anti-capitalism, so therefore it is also anti-colonialism, because capitalism relies on colonialism or imperialism to take out which is not theirs and making it theirs, right? Colonialism takes land and resources of a group in a designated area that's already there and be like, we have better technology, we have better XYZ, and we are just a better people, and then it is ours now. Whoop-de-doo, colonization in its great effect, right? So decolonization, break it down, right? At least, to the point where it's like you can recognize what's going on. So everything that U.S. agenda does, colonization, imperialism, capitalism, private, who left this to get as many. So yeah, this is a political discussion, right? You use these big words, leftism, right? But when we go out and hand out the strike cards, I don't say means of production, surplus value extracted, by bourgeois entity. I don't say, the Communist Manifesto, conditions, liberations of the, proletariat, liberation. None of that. I go out and say, hey, wouldn't it be nice to get paid more? And then it's like, yeah, I think I would. And then you start talking, and then you get into the conversations of, well, have you tried, you don't want to step over. Have you tried unionizing? Sometimes that conversation can work. But most of the time it's like, well, you don't try and individualize because job hopping is a form of individualizing societal problems, right? You getting as much pay for yourself, not a bad thing, right? It's a reaction to what the system has forced people to do. Job hopping, right? But this does leave a lack of solidarity from workplace to workplace, but I would say it kind of leaves a solidarity to class as a whole. It's kind of like a wishy-washy topic, talk about job hopping, but talk about decolonization and stuff when you're talking about actual getting people to sign the strike card, on the street work, big words for philosophical talk, for political discussion, so that we can better understand each other. You get down to the nitty-gritty of human to human touch, to talk about, wouldn't you like get paid more? Wouldn't you like to, not rely on corporations anymore? Wouldn't it be nice to not die from the foods that you eat? That's pretty good. You plant the seeds of radicalized thought. You don't just go in, hammer, full force, bam, means of production. You just go in, bam, surplus value. You don't do none of that. That's what scares people. And that is the jargon and language that McCarthyism has embedded into individuals. Don't listen to anyone who talks about socialism. Oh my God, the Red Scare, propaganda, McCarthyism. You talk about it in terms of which people understand. Bigger paycheck, woo. Better living conditions, woo. All of these things, right? And decolonization is one of them, right? Most people would say colonization is great because America is great, because they have taught that America is great. You break it down from the point. Well, I won't say America is great. America is pretty bad. Colonizing is pretty bad. Colonizing kills people, right? Oh, but what about technology and people who have farms and people who stuff like that? Well, you get into these conversations, talk about it, get into it, right? I won't say debunking these points, but addressing the contradictions, right? Is it people better off with more technology, or is people better off, living the life out which they have, built and accustomed and schemed in? Patriarchy. Yes, dismantle it. Don't like it. World religion. And religion, you know, as Karl Marx says, is the opium of the masses. Not saying it's a bad thing, but it is a distraction, a class distraction. To a, you know, when you put religion first, it's a class distraction. When you put religion second, you are expressive. You're an individual who understands, right? Because no Marxist or communist is going to say that you can't practice religion anymore. That's silly. It's a silly thing to say, because we're not. We're not advocating for the abolition of, you know, religion. We're advocating for the right to, you know, pray and, you know, express ourselves without being exploited by our mode of production. You know, Comrade TikToks put it great. I would rather feed your children first before they pray, or, you know, or else they starve or pray starving. And you don't want that. Who you envision the audience of this political session? Anyone with ears. I don't really have a specific target audience. I know it's like a marketing 101 red flag, always have a target audience, but basically political sessions are for, because I break down politics like this. And for the most part, this is true. Politics is no more than just an outward production of an individual's philosophy, how an individual thinks. The mode of thought materialized through a production process, mouth, words, throat, lungs, voice box, whatever, and then onto politics, or the materialized philosophy, right, in which we get to understand and describe the object at hand at which we are presented with that came from someone else's production of their philosophy. So however someone thinks, materialize, that's a politic. Anyone can create a politic. Right. But when we're talking about politics, we're talking about, you know, we're kind of a little side discussion right here. But when we're talking about politics, right, what most people think now, politics as a general, is actually bourgeois politics. No one likes to talk about bourgeois politics because bourgeois politics is profit based. It's profit motive. No one likes that. We could this entire discussion, don't mean to scare you now, but the entire discussion has been political. But notice how it was all warmy, fuzzy. It wasn't all like raw, boo, scary, profit mode. I'm going to take your children now. I'm going to eat your toes. Blah, blah, blah. No, this is a great discussion. It is political too, because this is just an outward projection of my philosophy, well, the collective philosophy, right? Because these aren't just, you know, off dome spit. You know, I do some research into the group, into what we should discuss, into the, you know, the outer geopolitical realms and whatnot. But politics is just an outward projection of a philosophy, how someone thinks. So, and how someone thinks, right, outward projection of a philosophy, you talk about these freedoms. And these freedoms, right, you talk about, is it given, is it restrained? We talk about, you know, the unshackling, the liberation of these people to get, you know, our freedoms, right? Because when you're born, you are already have freedom. They're not given to you, right? The moment they're given is the moment you exist. So therefore, when you exist, you have freedoms and rights. They are shackled and restrained based off of the contract, either willfully signed, consently, or consensually, that you are signing, right? As a U.S. citizen, your U.S. citizenship is contingent on the fact that the U.S. has, quote unquote, given you these rights, and therefore, if you forfeit these rights, you get sent to the labor camps. I mean, prisons. Same thing, labor camps, right? In which the oppressed, you know, marginalized groups inside of the incarcerated, you know, these camps are oppressed people themselves, right? So politics plays a great role in everything. Everything is political because it is just an outward projection of a philosophy, however you think, right? Deconstruct is what, because decolonization is also that deconstruction that politics, or everything about politics, is bourgeois politics, when in reality it's just a section or a sliver of actual, well, politics. Because bourgeois politics is gross. No one wants to talk about profit. No one wants to talk about how we can, you know, extract surplus value out of an exploited labor class. You know, but in layman's terms, no one wants to talk about how we can just fuck the poor and give the rich. Right? Steal from the poor, give to the rich. Kind of, that's bourgeois politics. No one likes talking about that. I don't like talking about that. I stay away from it. Bourgeois politics also includes policies from the Democrats or the Republicans, the red or blue sides of the aisles, when they issue policy and be like, this bill says fuck trans people. What? Why are you even discussing this right now? It's like giving me a little bit, you know, this little line right here, a little vein. That's bourgeois politics. When you're discussing the appropriation of identities, whether in proletariat politics or, you know, general communist politics, you talk about the appreciation of identity, the appreciation of labor, not the appropriation of labor, not the that extraction of surplus value, not that I will make a paycheck and it's not enough to, you know, sustain my living conditions, right? That's what you could also get when you're talking to people. I hit that with a couple of people sometimes. Say, hey, are you making a paycheck? 10 times out of 10, you know, they're out of workplace. And is that paycheck doing good by you? Is like, you know, you getting, you know, your rent, your food pay? Like, no. And I'm like, it seems like an afterthought, right, to these people, where it's like, it doesn't, but I can make it work. I won't say that's a red flag, but that's something you should look out for. Is I can make it work. I'll do my own thing. Like, that is the normalized U.S. hegemonic thought, American exceptionalism, individualism. Me will get it done. It will, help. I will help myself. So when we talk about capitalism, the pick-me system, the consumption conspicuously, doing it obviously, flaunting, but inconspicuous production, people not knowing how the stuff works, right? So I bet you the cashier was at the cashier register, right? No fault to them, or no fault to anyone really, but doesn't know how that cash, the register functions, the till. How does the till come up? Right, you push the button on the screen, till comes out. I can do my job now. But how did that till work, right? There's some relays, or there's some sensors and switches. There's like maybe a motor in there that pops it out, and the locking function that clicks, inconspicuous production. But people do not know how stuff works. Naturally, not everyone is supposed to know how everything works. That's not what we're here to do for. We're here to understand how we can help the collective together, and where individuals specialize in this stuff, right? And that is people, we have that in capitalism, kind of, sort of. It's privatized, right? The privatization of specialty skills, because specialty skills deemed worthy by, and we get into the leisure class of this, right? Some occupations are deemed more worthy than others. So like janitors, anyways, you go janitors, and then you go to like mid-level executive, associates and stuff, and then you go all the way to CEOs and financiers and whatnot. There are levels to occupation. There's a hierarchy of occupations that exist within the capitalist system, which not only affect your pecuniary strength, or your ability to have finances, stable finances, but also your social rank, your social hierarchy, in which if you work as a janitor, you are perceived as lowly. Of course, we don't believe that in here, but for that sake of example, that is how the normalized mode of thought is. You work as a low, quote unquote, lowly job, like your cashier, associate, what do they call it? A low skill job, whatever that bullshit baloney is, a low skill job, but janitorial stuff and stuff like that, versus the banking, financiers, your CEOs, your CFOs, all of your drop shippers, all your work smarter, not harder people, those people. But don't say they don't work not hard, right? They work smarter, not harder, but they definitely work hard. That you can assure a capitalist and a billionaire does that, working hard stuff for sure. But that is the capitalist pick-me system. It is to look at my small hands. Look at me, I'm so small and dainty. Now please buy from me. Right? Oh, look at me, I'm feeling all insecure. Come and help me by giving me $1,000, right? Capitalist pick-me system. Pick me, choose me, as capitalism says. And then of course, through our analysis of the material condition, we say, no, pick me girl, no, pick me capitalism. We will not choose you because you are an attention whore, and we will redirect our energy, our dollars, our money, our labor, our thought, our beings, our peoples away from this mode of production, which we can then start to dismantle capitalism while building up community, or the sense, the antithesis, socialism, in which the means of production is owned by the public. Yes, that's correct. So capitalism, pick-me system, boo, don't like that. Socialism, gigachat system, ooh, great. It's great. Because there is no such, at least to the great heavily extent we experience here, there is no conspicuous consumption of the socialism, right? People don't just, buy that Mercedes, buy it. Now, people have automotive transportation to do the thing that it is made to do, right? Not saying that there isn't going to be any customization or expression of socialism, but I'm saying that you won't see a quote $500,000 car next to a $5,000 piece of shit Honda. Mine, no, that and they exist in the same space, right? Equality and whatnot. That person, he worked for all of his stuff. He worked for all of his labor. He got all that stuff. Oh, this person didn't work on it. He has a Honda. That goes away, because we would then live in a meritocracy. Oh my God, there's the word. Right now, capitalism exists in this false meritocracy, this capitalist pick-me system. This I will work hard, but I don't get anything from it type of system. Whereas socialism, you would not be perfect, right? And it's not supposed to be perfect, but you would get this, I work and I get what I need, right? I work and I don't have to worry about my house being taken away. I don't have to worry about, starving for a night. I don't have to worry about, being psychologically tortured by my, boss every time I walk into work. That's a good start. That's a good thing. But it's not entirely radical to be like, guys, everyone needs housing. It may seem like a radical thought to the most people, but I'm here to break it down, here to set it in stone. It's not radical to say, yeah, people should have housing. It's not radical to say either. People should get fed too. Bread. Maybe if you have allergies, other foods as well. Provide what you can for people to eat, to live. It's not radical to say people deserve water. It's not radical to people to say people deserve psychological health, right? Because it's not just material subsistence to what you see, but people suffer from individual needs. Like people have needs that may not be quenched and filled by the traditional subsistence. People need psychological help. People need actual care, which is a human right. But what do I know? Right? I'm just yapping on the internet. So it is that 4 minutes after I did a little bit over. I will stay for a little bit. This was a little bit of a longer discussion for me, at least. So capitalism, freedoms, decolonization, all great stuff. Union discussion, that was great. If you have any questions, write them down. If you want to speak them out, speak them, and then we can talk about it. But I will be here for however long that discussion goes on. Once again, Jaden, Bay Area, California, woo woo, organizing, whatnot, YouTube, whatnot, so forth and all that. So if you have any questions, write them down, hang out. I will be here. But thank you so much for joining. And if you do need to leave. It is 5 minutes after. So I'm not here to hold anyone. These are recorded. Will be posted up on YouTube. So if you do miss some, you want to hang out, don't worry about it. It'll be there for you. So great, blah, blah, blah. Questions. I'll hang out for about 5-10 if there are no questions. So hang out, say stuff. I'm gonna drink my apple juice tea. And that's it. Thank you all for being here. Love you all.
Hey, comrade, just tuning in real quick, leaving this program, but I just wanted to say,
Yeah, here you go.
organization, the well-needed topic that needs to be discussed, and as always, I enjoy the discussion.
Right on. Decolonization is one of them topics you can never put down. So long as there are colonizers, there's going to be decolonization discussions.
Go ahead and dry off, son. Yes, she is. Hey, do you guys hear me out there?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah. So first off, I just want to send some love and appreciate what you guys are doing. And as someone who's been active in the community for a very long time, I really appreciate seeing someone like yourself reaching out to us. Phoenix, I'm talking right now. Sorry, I'm talking to my son. Just gave him a bath. But what I really wanted to kind of at least hit on for a little bit, I don't necessarily know what the goals were. I got put onto you guys through another site and just wanted to see what you guys were about. And where I stand right now in 2025, I kind of have this fear that the other side, whatever you want to look at the other side as, that they are on a different level than we are. I feel like I've been active since like the 2000s, early 2000s. I'm an old head. And what kind of concerns me is that I feel like we're playing the old tunes. We're playing the old favorites, and they've kind of moved on to this misinformation, disinformation type of thing that gets in the way of some of the things that were mentioned tonight that I feel are absolutely relevant. We've kind of, or not going to say we, the uh, the the um, the other side has kind of put a different spin on things that makes it where we're not always on the same page as like our coworkers. I'm a part of a union actually, and I would love to share this with my union, but I can't because of certain languaging that's used now. And it starts to divide us. It starts to put us in a certain perspective where they're not hearing the actual message as much as they are hearing these trigger words. And that's where we are, I feel, in 2025. There are a lot of trigger words. There are a lot of things that are divisive. I was just talking to my partner earlier today about like the idea that like we sit in a place where the ideas of diversity, which I think is awesome, and equity and inclusivity are considered bad is wrong to me. But that's where we stand. And we are in an administration right now that looks at diversity, equity, and inclusion as bad things. And so we have a big fight ahead of us. And if we need more people, or if you guys want more people, we have to work on our language and we have to work on our message because they have dumbed it down to the point where I feel like our battle is even harder. And so that's what scares me right now in 2025 is that I think about my mother, I think about my uncles, my aunties who work and who could do with the strike. We need this. But to get them to sign on, for me to send and forward them this kind of stuff, and then for them to hear things about like Marxism and stuff, which I'm cool with, but they might not be, is just it's difficult. It's a hard line to toe. I live in North Carolina, and this is a very purple. There are a lot of rednecks who I love. I've learned a lot from rednecks. I learned to fish. I've learned a lot about survival and those kind of things, and I respect them for that. I respect them for the idea of kind of preparing for things that some people like me from the city where I grew up are not used to. But I'm sorry I'm on this tangent, but it's just to say, like, if we want a general strike, that's why I'm here. If we want a general strike, we have to get way more people involved, and it's not people who are going to be able to sit and listen to the stuff that we heard today.
Yeah.
But I still respect everything that was said.
Oh yeah. Oh no, for sure. Valid points. And I love everything that was said, especially that last point, right? We're not going to have these great grand discussions to every single individual, right? We shouldn't water it down too much, but there's a language, a connecting language, right? Where it's like, you're not getting paid enough and whatnot. But of course, there's trigger words, Marxism, socialism, and communism, or all of these words that like just turn that thought off. I've heard these words, I've been told what they mean, and now I've labeled this entire conversation as that meaning. And so you don't get any productive conversations done, which is an important thing to, have in the back of our heads when we're out organizing. We say these words commonly in our spaces because that's what they represent, right? Liberation, the freedom, class consciousness and stuff. But when we go out to, the people or the workplaces and stuff, there is an established mode of thought, the liberal mode of thought. And the liberal mode of thought is individualism. So that's where I'm trying to reach out into people's individual lives, bring them out. It's a hard step to get people from individual to community, because most people don't know what it looks like, because it has been deconstructed and it has been defamed, against, debased, it's ever since the survival programs, the Black Panther Party, right? And there's really isn't really much great community that comes from any organizations, which is what we're trying to do here. But as far as the general strike, right, we're not asking for anyone, not to your point, but you're not asking anyone to picket fence, quit your job, do anything to dissent against the system, start, clubs and, stuff like that. But striking against the system, you could still be participating within it. You would just have to redirect your labor, your energy, towards other avenues. Even if the avenues themselves indirectly contribute, it is getting to that process of making change, because a revolution is change. This is a big change, right? Conservatism is the conservation of that no change, or like that staticness, right? So beginning people to change, right? So maybe you want to, if you're shopping at Walmart or Target, even if it's kind of hard out of the way, look for a local shop. Even if you can't get to a local shop, right, start doing stuff that is self-sustaining for yourself, right? At least make some changes in either your lives or in your routine or whatnot that helps you get into the rhythm of change, because revolution is big change, right? I don't imagine anything staying in this society for too long, right? I'll go out into supermarkets and stores and seeing all this like marketplace style, ran operations, and I'm like, well, it feels things a lot, things need to make a drastic change, but we can make individual changes, right? That helps us get into that rhythm. So I would say go to farmers markets if you have them, thrift shops if you have them, antique shops, get into a little more of the community, right? Revolution is a evolution of the human consciousness, as Comrade Day says. So it's being more aware, right? That conservation, I would say conservation of contradictions, right? This non-development of consciousness, that non-awareness, it gets people into this this static, this rock solid, rigid like thought. This like things are the way they are. It is what it is, right? It's a common thing I hear, especially working at UPS. It is what it is. Can't change it. And that is the type of leaning into that thought where it's like dangerous, where it's like, well, no, it is what it is, yeah, but for a reason, right? It didn't just pop in out of nowhere and then it is established itself as is. How most people view the police, the pigs, the cops, or the U.S. government. Like, it is what it is here. And then there's no further discussion or investigation as to why it's here, right? But it is talks about education and stuff, but there's a lot more than just these discussions that we can go into, right? I think this is like one of your like second or third layer removed from that conversation, that initial discussion, right? You wouldn't be sending this to your conservative uncle, be like, listen to this, you'll be radicalized. That's not what these conversations are for. These are to help us develop our ironclad defenses against the conservative mode of thought, so that we can become well equipped mentally, so that we can be out there organizing and have tools within ourselves to, you know, defend against this critiques and this rhetorics, you know, the critique against individualism and stuff like that. So these discussions are, I wouldn't say a little higher level. I wouldn't say levels at all, but these discussions are geared towards individuals who either have an open mind or are looking to get themselves deeper rooted into that left anti-capital thought. But we're out in the street, say paychecks, raises, wages, housing conditions, landlord sucks. That's become a really good a thing nowadays. People are realizing that landlords fucking suck. So that's a good thing to throw out. Landlords suck, billionaires, business classics, one like that. We're having these discussions in this space, right? A little higher language will be used so that we can better articulate what we want to say. But we're out in the street. Speak the language of the people, right? People bad, oppressor bad, billionaires bad, workers good. We the workers, we the people. That's what you want to say. So cool. Love the questions, love the discussion. Just looking at the chat for these questions. If you have a question, say, speak, type.
I was just going to say, if you're talking to people, you need to make sure to know your audience and what they're going to be thinking based on what you're saying. Mm-hmm. Because, like the other person was saying, you can definitely turn them off at certain words, but yeah, it's just up to whoever's going out to try to recruit people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, be careful of the language, because, you know, even though we want to say, you know, liberation, or, you know, proletariat or class, or if you want to say, you know, socialism, you know, all these words, right? People have that shut off. People have that, oh, I heard that word, it ain't gonna work, I know what that is. When individuals more often than not probably don't know what that is, but you won't be able to get that roadblock passed. So you have to do some little wordplay, a little slithering and snaking around, and be like, oh, we're not talking about this, we're not talking about this, we're talking about this, you know? So bouncing around and playing with the words is a little bit of like a word puzzle, but it's not impossible, right? Because as you know, fundamentally, the oppressed are the oppressed. Your paycheck is not paying for your rent. Your paycheck is not, but whose fault is that, right? It's not going to be the individual who didn't work enough hours, especially when those hours are cut, you know, by the corporation or by the enterprise. So it's like, whose fault is it really? And if the individual blames themselves, they buy into American exceptionalism. The individual buys in, and that's when we pull out, you know, tread carefully, where it's like, you know, it's not entirely your fault, because no one likes to shift off the blame entirely, right? There becomes a vacuum then, which then that blame comes right back and fills in that vacuum. So, you know, careful with your language, stuff like that. You know, if you hit, you miss, but we're all walking different parts and portions of our lives, or different paths. So not everyone's going to be at that same radicalizing point where it's like, yeah, eat billionaires, eat the rich, right? Some people may be like, tax the rich. And they were like, okay, tax them. And then what, right? ACAB, all cops, all of them, every single one of them, every single one of them, shield wearing, pigsty living, you know, mud wearing, pee pee poo poo cops are bad, boo, don't like them. That's another discussion again. So it doesn't have to be a politics, or it is still going to be a politic, but you got to talk about other discussions, right? Cops, me personally, I get anxiety when I see a cop. Like, that's just me personally, though. I like get a little jittery. I'm like side eyeing them, right, from my car on the street. Freaks me out. Gross. Makes me feel unsafe. You know, it's the police are here to protect the peace, keep the safe. Disturbing the peace, fucking up the safety. Yeah. Cops will pull over someone with tint before they, you know, catch a burglar, or robber, or a murderer. They'll pull someone over with too dark of a tint or too loud of an exhaust before the cop will actually go back to their, you know, state. They're trying to fill their status. They're trying to fill the status quo. They're trying to get their quota. Easiest quota. Tinted, 5% tint, too loud of an exhaust. You drive a right-hand drive car. It's going to the compound. Then you have to pay the private enterprise or the city, or wherever the cop sent that car, for $500, and then you gotta, you know, do all this stuff, all this paperwork, and just get your car out, and then it happens again. I think it's just one big money laundering move for the state, pulling people over with cars. That's crazy. With like illegal mods. Illegal. Who said I couldn't put a V8 in my Honda? Who said I couldn't remove the catalytic converter from my? So it was going to be stolen anyways. Catalytic converter. I just sold it so that I can make the quick buck. Right? It's just I'm not letting anyone else get in that quick buck. It's my car. I took the liberty of taking off my own catalytic converter to sell. Cause ain't nobody getting that off me. They'll go onto the car and be like, hey, it's already gone. I'm like, how? Because I did that. That's so funny. Cops refused to shoot protesters. Banger. They were making cookies stuff for the riot cops. Oh. They'll hit you with the smallest charges just to pin you on a big one. Oh, hey, what's this? Planted cannabis? Oh my god. You're going to the slammer. Yeah, fight together, right? Because when we make the class distinction between an individual who is capitalist versus proletariat, it goes like this. If you make a paycheck and that you are reliant on that paycheck, working class, proletariat, outright, straight up, right? Even if you have like a little bit of stocks, you're like bourgeois aligning. But if you still rely on that paycheck to have your subsistence, working class. If you have capital or a business at which you could just say, I'm not going to work anymore, and you can still live, capitalist. Simple. Even some of the extreme forms of petite bourgeois are working class, because the individual business owner, the small business owner, cannot just say, guys, I'm done working. And then that small business itself can keep running afloat for them to, buy their whatever they need and stuff. No. If the petite bourgeois small business owner is not able to just quit one day and be like, I'm done working, and his employees or her employees or whatever can keep the business afloat while he sits back, takes his own paycheck, and then he does nothing, like no labor, that would then be considered, bourgeois, the class trader. It would be like, you fucking dirty pig, you fucking CEO, whatnot. But most petite bourgeois small business owners do not fall into that category, right? Because most small business owners, right, work all the damn time. Right, they work with capital, gross, but the individual works. That's the fundamental thing. Individual theory of the leisure class, Ornstein Veblen. There is a disgust of labor the leisure class carries, right? So the most pinnacle leisure class type individual can get the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, all these families. They don't drive themselves. I drive. They don't cook for themselves. I cook. I'm not saying, any of these points, make me feel any better. But these individuals don't do any labor themselves. They have a pilot at which flies their plane. They have a driver at which drives their car. They have a chef at which cooks their meals. The individual leisure class, the leisure class individuals do not labor themselves. There's a disgust or disdain of labor that they do not commit to themselves. It's kind of strange, kind of weird. But that is the distinction between classes, right? Where one appreciates labor. I love working. I love labor. I love doing stuff. Versus the individual who appropriates labor, the capitalist, the extraction of the surplus value. Yes, the participants will be shown on YouTube. Yes. Because I'm recording the whole screen. You'll see it on YouTube. Say it louder. Free Sudan, Palestine, Congo. Say it louder. Type it louder. Type it in caps. With exclamation points.
Did I miss it? Is it over?
We're wrapping it up. I can do a little summary. Yeah, just having a little open discussion, questions and stuff. Are you just now hopping in?
Yeah.
Cool. We'll go over a little recap. I'll post the agenda we had in the chat. So if you need to leave, but if you're just hopping in, I'll do a little. So in the chat, you'll see what we talked about. I'll go from the top to the bottom. So I describe capitalism as a pick me system. Hi, pick me, choose me. As this, marketing, the psychological warfare that capitalism does, expropriating the markets to get what people, from the mode of production, the services and the products like your advertisements and such. Participants will be shown. I don't know if I moused over the window to show everyone's username, but if you type in chat, his name will be displayed. But capitalism, pick me system, and we talk about conspicuous consumption. And it's just obvious flaunting consumption. So it's like when you consume. Ooh, sorry. I didn't say in the beginning, but don't worry. I don't think anyone will come after anyone. Don't worry. It'll have to go through me. It'll go through me first. It'll be your knight in shining armor. Don't worry.
I love that.
But conspicuous consumption is the pick me system. When you talk about consumption and do it so conspicuously, you're thinking of when people buy the Mercedes, people buy the mansion. They don't do it just to have themselves a Mercedes, make them feel better about themselves. For the most part, that might be it. But what happens observably is when people look at that, like conspicuous, obvious, people look at that consumption, people think certain things. But people think certain things in the social hierarchy. So conspicuous consumption comes from this, observation from Thorstein Veblen, just another American Marxist. And conspicuous waste that goes with that. So when you consume, I did the example of making ramen from individual packets. I don't even seen those videos, those TikTok videos. It's where you have the individual brick ramen in a package, and then the seasoning in a different package, and then the bowl in a different package, and all these in different packages, like your seasoning, your sauce, your soup base, and whatnot. All these in different packages, your plastic packages, your conspicuous waste. So not only do you conspicuously consume, showing people that you have the means to consume like this, no matter how expensive your clothing or the food that you make, and then your conspicuous waste, all the stuff you have to show for it. So like when you talk about the Mercedes, talk about the emissions that come from that Mercedes and whatnot. And then inconspicuous production. No one knows how this stuff works. Like when you drive a car, and you're not expected to know, right? But when you drive a car, you don't know how the car moves forward. You just know that when you step on your gas pedal, in drive, it goes forward, right? Not knowing the processes in production at which makes that car go forward, the internal combustion process from fuel and stuff. And we talk about freedoms, what it means to have a freedom, right? Are freedoms given or restrained? They are shackled. They're not. No freedom is given. You don't give back freedom. You don't give freedoms to anyone, right? That would denote a hierarchy, a relationship, and where this individual has more of an authority or power over you, and then they give you rights, but your rights are contingent on this little entity to maintain itself, at which you maintain through the social and the societal structures, So rights aren't given, they just exist. They are just like you in throw. When you exist in throw, you are here. Therefore, when you are here, you already have all your rights, because you did not consent to be here, to be born, right? To listen to my voice with your ears and on whatever device, phone or laptop you're on or computer. Right? You're not consented to be here. America's manufactured consent, right? When you're born a U.S. citizen, right? And you're conditioned to do so, to believe in this consent, because America has done so much for me. They have given me a shitty public education, absolutely no social welfare, and absolutely no sort of reliance beyond private enterprise for all of my needs. It's a great place to be here, but that is your freedoms. It's you have to be unshackled from them. They are shackled, your rights, right? You don't give women freedoms back. They already had, it is the man's, the penis holder, the patriarchy that shackles the women's freedoms, right? You getting me? It is the white supremacist system at which shackles the blacks' rights, right? You don't just give them rights, you unshackle those rights, because it is a self-liberation. You can't, white people don't liberate black people's, issues. Cisgendered individuals don't liberate transgendered issues. You don't do that. It's self-emerging process. Liberation happens and occurs. So freedoms are already here. You already have them. And when you don't have them, they're not, stolen, they're shackled. because if they're stolen, you don't have them anymore. But you do have them. They're just, you can't express yourselves with that. So that's what freedoms are. We talk about that. And then decolonization is a core tenet to the left of values, because capitalism is colonialism. Right, capitalism expropriates markets all across the world. We call that imperialism, but you do so in colonialism. Is where you take the land which is not theirs, makes it yours, or take land which is not yours, makes it yours. Right, what is theirs makes it yours. All the resources and the land and such, and then you build on top of it. It's kind of what they want to do to Palestine from pigs, right? But that is your colonization, right? That is your liberal mode of thought, your land and your law, how colonizing, right, affects our cultures and stuff and the way we live. And then we talked a little bit about a union. Be careful about your unions. I support them, but I went to a little tangent about how I worked at UPS, talking about the unions and stuff. Oh, whatnot, beautiful nonsense. We were talking about unions, which is great. I was there when they ratified the Teamsters contract of 2023. Boo. They barely got any pay, which sucks. They didn't have any concessions to pensions, which most of the older drivers wanted and they didn't get. So it's just a complete slashing of pensions, retirement, pay as well, because they could have gotten way more. But here's the thing. There is like a quote unquote gentleman's agreement to where the Teamsters don't get paid more than the mechanics, because then the mechanics would get pissy and then they would quit. Me too. I was in that mindset back then. So mechanics are always paid more than drivers. It is like a natural law, like at least at UPS, right? No one driver will make more per hour than a mechanic. Now, this doesn't mean that they won't make more take home. Most drivers make more take home because of the holidays, because of peak season, because of the way hours are, distributed amongst the drivers. Some drivers do 12 hours, and then after their 10th hour, they get double time after their 4th day or something like that, right? Following DOT regulations. But we get into union stuff like that. So when I used to work at UPS, it was $40 an hour. The drivers are made top max 35, 38. They didn't make 40. But then this new contract, at the end of the contract, they will be making $40 an hour. But at the end of the machinist contract in 2029, they will be making like $47 an hour. Almost 50. I wanted 50. Everyone wanted 50 when the machinist contract ratified. We're not getting 50. They're not getting 50. I'm not part of it anymore. But that was our discussion. Capitalism, pick me system high, pick me, my hands are small, look at me, I'm an attention whore, capitalism, advertisements, freedoms and whatnot, talking about your freedoms, and then decolonization and unions. That was pretty much the entire discussion. That was the whole hour and some change in 5-ish minutes. So that was a little summary. And then we ended off with an open discussion, and that's where you hopped in.
Yes, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, no problem. And then these sessions are recorded, so people watching on YouTube got like 3 different summaries in the one video, which is great. If you're having on the background, you should be about the same 3 things 3 different times. So cool. It is 5:30 at my time. Kind of dialing down here. So thank you so much for joining me. We'll be hopping off now. The sessions are recorded, going up on YouTube Friday noon-ish. And then we did start recording the Sunday meetings, which I dropped the ball on. I was supposed to upload that on Tuesday, overslept, and then had to do something, and it was up on Wednesday. But those Sunday meetings will be uploaded on Tuesday, just like how 2-day break between Wednesday and Friday for these discussions. So, but enough about that. Thank you all so much for joining, whether you're here live or you're here, on the video, whatever, drop a like, comment, share, and whatnot. But we are here for the people. We're here for the liberation of the people, the education of the people. So stay safe, everyone. Love you all, comrades, right? Long live the resistance. Most importantly, all power to the people. Love you all. Stay safe. Thank you, everyone, for being here.